Chris. Today I'm going to be telling you guys a story about when I got scammed on the internet. So, jumping straight into the story, there's a hair in me. It was the year 2014. I had just barely graduated from high school and I decided that I wanted to go to a certain college that was 4 hours away from my house and from my parents' house. I started looking for, I had already found an apartment, I had already found the college obviously, and so I started looking around for some sort of job that I could get so that when I got there, I would actually already have a job. So I started looking online, I applied to this grocery store, and I submitted my application. It was weird because even though I had submitted it, it never told me that sometimes when you apply for a job, you get a confirmation email back saying, thank you for applying at blank. I never got that email, so I was like, well, maybe it didn't go through, and it had already taken me like half an hour to an hour to fill out this application, so I was like, I'm not going to go through it again, I'll just find another job. So I continued through life. I ended up applying to a couple different places, and eventually that grocery store called me back and said, hey, would you like to come to an interview at this date? And the date was the perfect time. The date of the interview was the week of that I would move down. So I would be moving down on Monday and the interview was on Thursday. So it was like the perfect timing, and I was like, great, so if I go to the interview and I get hired, then I have a job like right there. So I moved down, everything was good. I go to the interview and they told me that they didn't want me. Okay, that sounds bad. They told me that they weren't hiring at the time, but that they would keep my records in mind and they were just conducting interviews to kind of get the idea of who they would hire and if they ever needed a position filled. So I was like, okay, this place is a bust, they're not gonna hire me. They just told me to my face they're not gonna hire me. So I need to start looking for more jobs. And so I started applying for different jobs and nobody was hiring at that time. And it was just terrible because I just didn't know what to do. I really needed a job. Nobody was calling me back or emailing me or anything. And I started to get a little bit desperate. So I decided to go on to, I can't remember if it was Craigslist or KSL, one of those two, and look for some just some odd-end jobs while I found an actual legitimate job. And this is where I met the creepy guy who scammed me. So I was scrolling through all of these different jobs. There were some really creepy looking ones that were models needed, woman only. I found one that looked pretty legitimate. It was for a housekeeping job and for an older gentleman, I believe. I honestly couldn't tell if it was for a woman or a boy. I guess the name kind of doubled for a woman or a boy. I'm gonna call this person by a different name for obvious reasons, and I'm just gonna call them Ben. I texted Ben and I told him, hey, I saw your ad on KSL/Craigslist, whatever it was, and I am wondering if you're still looking for someone to fill the position. And he was like, I am actually. And I was like, oh great, can you tell me a little bit more about it? And he was like, yes, so you would be here in my mansion. And he actually said the word mansion. He said, yes, you will be cleaning my mansion about 3 times a week for 3 or 4 hours, and I will pay you about $1,000 every 2 weeks or something. And okay, I worked the housekeeping job and it wasn't $1,000 bi-weekly. That seems like a little bit too much. But at the time, I just really needed a job and I wasn't really thinking straight. And I was also away from my home, away from my family. And I didn't want to tell my dad and ask him for money because I'm the one that wanted to move out and go to college at this 4-hour away place. I was like, okay, and he said, yeah, so you would be coming over here cleaning, I would send you a check, I will send you a check for this and that and blah 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 blah. So I was like, alright, sounds good. And I forgot to mention that he did ask for my address to be able to send the check to me with, and I gave it to him, which later turned out to be really, really scary. But we will get to that in just a moment. Anyway, back to the story. And I gave him my address, and that was the scariest part of this whole experience, is that I gave him my address. So he gets my address and he was like, okay, I'm sending you some money in advance, and if you could come tomorrow. And I was like, okay, sounds good. And the more I started thinking about this, the more of just a bad feeling I started to get in my stomach. Like, it just didn't feel right. It didn't feel like this was legitimate, just because I had never done anything like this before, and it didn't seem right to me that he was sending me money before I had even worked. The town that I lived in was a pretty decent town. It was a college town, but it didn't feel like there was any mansions or anything. I don't know, it just seemed like a really illegitimate deal. And so I started thinking more about this, and I was like, you know what, I think this guy might be scamming me. And I know what you guys are going to say in the comments, and you're going to be like, well, you should have seen this coming like before. Like, obviously there were signs and stuff, but I didn't. Yeah. I think I ended up putting it on Yahoo Answers. Yahoo Answers. And I explained the whole situation, and somebody answered my Yahoo Answer question with, "This might be money laundering. Watch out." And I was like, what's money laundering? Because I've never heard of that before. And so I googled it, and apparently what that is when somebody sends you stolen money, and you like put it in your bank account or something. And let me actually Google that, because I don't want to be wrong about this, just so that I can explain it a little bit better than me just like being like, yeah, he gave me the money and then yeah. So it says, money laundering is the generic term used to describe the process by which criminals disguise the original ownership and control of the proceeds of criminal conduct by making such proceeds appear to have derived from a legitimate source. So by giving me the money and me putting it somewhere like in my bank or whatever and spending it, or whatever he was thinking I was going to do with his money, he would have disguised this ownership of where it originally came from, because it seemed legitimate that a college student would be putting money into her own account. Like, I don't know if I'm making any sense here, but the person that explained this to me in Yahoo Answers was making complete sense, and I got freaked the heck out, and I just started like worrying, and I'm just like, you know what, this is a scam. This Ben person doesn't even, his name probably isn't even Ben. He's giving me money that he probably stole or something, and I ended up Googling his address. I don't know why I didn't do this in the beginning. I ended up Googling his address, and it ended up coming like it wasn't a real thing here in the state that I live in. And I was like, wait, that's not a real address here where I live. And I started Googling it more, and apparently the address was real for a different state, more south. And so I was like, oh, well, he's not, if he even does live in that state, he's not even in the same state as me. So I calmed down a little bit, and I texted him back, and I was like, hey, I don't think I'm going to be able to do this. I found a different job, and I just don't, I'm not going to be able to come clean your house for you. I'm so sorry. And he answered back, and he said, well, I already sent out the check for $1,000, and what am I going to do? Like, I just barely came back from the bank and from sending it out from the post office and all this stuff. And I was just like, you know what, as soon as that check comes into the mail, I will tear it up and I will throw it away, and I will shred it, and I will make sure nobody ever sees it, because I don't want you to be worrying about like me taking your hard-earned money or whatever. So I'm not going to use it. I'm not going to put it in my account. It's going to still be in your account. If I shred up the check, it's not going to be real anymore. It's going to be voided, obviously. So I never heard back from him from that, and so I was still worrying about this dang guy, because I was worried that he was going to come, break into my house, because I stupidly gave him my address, and I was afraid he was going to come to my house and murder me. So I talked to one of my roommates, and I was like, hey, this is what happened. I gave this guy my address. Like, what am I going to do? What if he comes and like kills us, you know, in our sleep? And she's like, it shouldn't even be that big of a deal, because the information that he has, which is your name, your address, and your phone number, is things that he can just find like in a regular old phone book. And that thought kind of made me stop and be like, oh, I guess you're right. And even though he did still have that information out there with him, for all he knows, I could have been lying about it, you know? As far as that went, 6 months later, I ended up moving back home, so it didn't really matter anymore. Like, he could do what he wants with that information, but all he had is my name. I changed my phone numbers because just time, my phone broke, and so I got a new phone. I don't live in that address anymore, and all he has is my name, which he can just Google and find it out. So, thankfully nothing happened out of that, but I was so seriously scared that he would kill me and he would come and break into my house and just like murder me in my sleep or something, and it was just the scariest thing. It came out of a really stupid decision and desperation. Oh, and also the day after this whole day was just stressful because I was worried that, you know, something bad was gonna happen. The very next day, I got a phone call from that grocery store and they were like, hey, would you like to come work for us? And I was like, bless you. Anyways, I hope that this story was somewhat entertaining to you. It wasn't really funny, it was just kind of like a story. But if you guys are ever looking for jobs on KSL or Craigslist, please be careful with the information that you take and that you give and everything like that, and just be careful because there are a lot of people out there that want to use you for things, that want to take things from you. Just be careful and watch yourselves out there. Obviously this was a couple years ago after I just barely graduated high school, so I wasn't exactly like thinking about like, oh, you know, this person might be a scammer, you know, until everything happened and I realized, oh, this person might be a scammer. So anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you comment, rate, and subscribe. I would really, really appreciate it to know that you're all out there watching me. And yeah, I would love to talk to you guys, and I will see you next time in my next video. Bye!